Welcome to the Parenting Different podcast, where we share real adoption stories, have honest conversations, and give hope for the hard days. We're here to encourage parents, build understanding, and make sure that every child is seen, heard, and valued. Welcome to the Parenting Different podcast. My name is Anna Bernacki, and today I am here with fellow adoptee, Simon Benn. I am so excited to have you here and have a conversation with you about your story and your life and your work. Start off by introducing yourself to us and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, thank you again, Anna, for this. We had such a fantastic conversation a couple of weeks ago. Yes. I'm sure that it's going to be great. And I'm interviewing you tomorrow. So, right, this is
yes.
all great. Yeah. So, listeners, you may be thinking, where is this guy from? Right. So, I'm not from the States. Okay. I live in the UK. I live in the north of England. So, I live near York and Leeds, in a little village called Huntingdon, and that is about 200 miles north of London, for a bit of context, right? So, and it's probably 70 miles west of, 70 miles east of where I was born. So I was born on January the 4th, 1967, and collected by my parents from an adoption council in February 67, and so I've lived around here for all that time. Yeah.
Wow.
Apart from college and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So you were telling me a little bit about your story when we were chatting before, and I think it's so interesting, like who your origin and who your family is. Do you want to get into a little bit of that and
Sure, yeah.
Talk about your history? I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah. So my mum and dad adopted me due to infertility stuff, right? They had fostered for a while, and when they got approved to adopt, they stopped fostering, so there'd been a place to take a child if one came available. I was the first one, I was the one that came available, and they also adopted a little girl a couple of years after. So my sister Penny, she's not my biological sister, but she's my sister. And I apparently on the trip to collect my sister from there, that's when they told me that I was adopted. So I was around 2 at that time. And so I grew up knowing and not having any kind of conscious kind of adoption trauma stuff. As far as I was concerned, my mum and dad are my mum and dad, right? I was what's the word? There's the jargon word, well-grounded.
Well-adjusted,
well, I don't know if I was well-adjusted. I had my moments, right? But
well, what I meant was, I think every child does.
Sometimes we overplay the adoption stuff, right? Sometimes the stuff is human rather than adoption related.
That is very true.
The people use the word like connected, rooted. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, my mum and dad were my real mum and dad, are my real mum and dad. Having interviewed a lot of adoptees, I realised that I had a far luckier time than a lot of them.
Yeah.
I got lucky with my parents. I didn't realise that I'd got lucky until I started interviewing other adoptees. Yeah. So I went to college. I went into the family business. I had a lot. I took over one of the family businesses in the mid 90s. So I would have been like 27, 28 at that time. And I had a lot of stuff with that, actually. I had a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of emotional stuff. I wanted to succeed, right? I was scared of failure, and we never really got close to failure. We always had money in the bank. It was like, people hear about a lot of business owners saying, I'm struggling to make payroll. Well, we never did. We never did that. I was worried about that. I was worried about failure. And finally, so I got a business coach because I wanted to avoid failure and actually have some success. And then I got to some success, and it didn't really do what I thought it was going to do for me. And
Yeah.
around that time, I found out that my teddy bear, who I've had for as long as I can remember,
Oh, I
is
love that.
from my birth. I found out it was from my birth mum. So at the age
Wow.
of 40, I found out that the teddy bear was from my birth mum, and that brought up some stuff for me, right?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
had a very short-lived idea that she didn't love me, and yes, I was telling the story to a coach, counselor kind of lady, just found out that teddy bear was from my birth mum. And I said she didn't love me enough to keep me. She gave me this teddy bear as a consolation prize. And the lady I was speaking to, Sarah, said, "Look, I'm a mum, Simon, and I don't think it would be quite like that." So I saw the truth in what she said, right? So I got at I got that truth at one level, at perhaps a surface level, and then 8 years later, I got my adoption file, and in there was a letter from my birth mum to the social worker, which I felt my birth mother's pain. I felt
Mm.
her anguish. I felt her grief, and most of all, I felt her love for me. And in the midst of the tears, I connected with her at a higher plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That had to have been so interesting. When I want to go back to what you said about feeling like you were failing in the business, even though realistically you weren't. Looking back, do you see some of that? We often hear adoptees say that they felt like they had to perform or they had to be perfect and reach the sense of perfection in order to make their adoptive parents proud of them. Do you ever feel that that played a role, like maybe subconsciously, that that ever played a role in that?
Perhaps I've thought about this a lot. I've
Yeah,
thought about this. Perhaps, and we'll never know.
right.
I'll never.
Right. It's all speculation, right?
I know it is all speculation, right? Um, I'm 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 kind of more interested in my fascination isn't my psychology, right? My
Okay.
fascination isn't my fascination isn't my beliefs. My fascination isn't my feelings. My fascination isn't my thoughts. I'm less interested in that stuff than understanding who I truly am, who we all truly are. So
Yeah, I always find that fascinating. I always like to look for like the why behind the behavior. And whether that's in my life, in my kids' lives, like what is causing this? Is that just they're kids and they're angsty and this is what they're trying to set their own autonomy, or are is there something underlying where there is some sort of grief or struggle or need for acceptance? And I always think it's fascinating to look at that why. And but I also understand what you're saying too. You can dig too deep and find things that aren't there at the same time.
yeah, and I'm saying that I'm not quite saying that quite like that. Maybe I can ask you a question
Sure.
on the why question. So, how does the why? How does the you gave an example, right? So, is this adoption, or is this human?
Right.
Yeah. Why are they behaving like that? What would knowing? help you do? I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm asking that right question.
I think from a parenting standpoint, it helps me meet the need. So is there a need?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
You
Okay.
know, like, are they looking for connection in all the wrong ways? Are they grieving something that, for example, we had a child struggling with eating and hoarding food and sneaking food. And so finding out that, and then they would only eat certain like really awful junk foods until they got sick. And so finding out the why, well, that was food that birth mom gave them as a form of connection. So now we're saying, okay, finding that why helps us explain the behavior. And then we were able to kind of understand it and rework it. So I guess that's more my curiosity. It's not so much in going and living in the past and trying to re rehash things, like what's done is done, but I think it kind of helps, especially from a parenting standpoint. It
Yeah.
helps me be a better parent.
Okay. Um, so I jumped too far down the line, I think. I guess if I think, I'm wondering why I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. So, is this business fear? Is this adoption related, or is it just a human thing? And I've been a bit contradictory now. I've said at one stage I thought I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I've just said that I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this. I have spent a lot of time thinking about it. I have drawn the conclusion that it won't actually help me, and I I don't think I can ever resolve it.
Yeah.
So I think perhaps that's led me to focus on other things, perhaps. And now I'm wondering whether I'm answering your question.
No, I think you are. And I think it's actually a really good reminder because so many adoptees do sit in all those negatives and want, and there's good in figuring out those whys, right? And some of the things and how our life has impacted other areas. But we can also sit in it too much and then not, it almost
Yeah,
cripples us and we can't move on from it. And we can't heal if we sit in it too much.
indeed. But understanding the need, knowing the why helps you understand the need from a parenting perspective. And perhaps because me and my wife haven't got any kids, I missed I
Yeah.
missed that answer. I missed the importance of that.
I would say also in advocating in my relationships, it has helped me to a certain extent. Again, you don't want to sit in it too heavy, but I think it has helped me with whether it's with a boss and saying, "Hey, I need you to communicate in this way." And maybe not like unloading all my trauma to them, but like I understand that this is why I need to be communicated with in a certain way. Or with my husband, "Hey,
Yeah,
when you just leave me hanging, it makes me feel abandoned. And so like can we rework this?" And so in advocating for healthier relationships, even I found
yeah,
understanding that why helps.
brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, thank you for helping me see that, because I'd missed something there.
Yeah. I think we all have such a unique and different perspective. And that's why it's so fun to have these conversations, right? Like we learn things from each other. And I think
Yeah,
that's so fascinating. So now you have a podcast. What else are you working on in the adoption space?
yeah. Well, just to step back a little bit. I'm 58 now. Oh no, I'm 58. No, I'm 59. I've just gone 59. So I've been diving into this healing stuff for 19 years now.
Yeah.
I found out um, that the teddy bear was from my birth month on my 40th birthday, and I've just had my 59th birthday. So I've been looking at this for a long time. I've started the podcast 5 years ago. Yeah, just
Okay.
kind of coming up 5 years ago. And I started doing speaking gigs pretty much straight after I started with the podcast, and then about 18 months or so ago, I started distilling all the learnings that I've had from doing the podcast into what I call the Thrive framework.
Okay.
So I do the podcast. We've done like 630 something episodes of the
Wow.
podcast.
That's a lot.
Fairly prolific. And then so my life is basically podcasting and training. That's what I do.
Okay.
Or thinking about those two things. That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So is your audience mostly other adoptees? Are you talking to adoptive families? Are you working with like agency workers? Or social services? What is your audience like and who are you
So,
training?
so first things first, in terms of the audience that listens to the podcast, I don't know. I know
Okay.
where I know where they are, but I don't know who they are.
Okay.
In terms of profession, 67% are from the US.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And 15% are from the UK.
Okay.
So US is a big. I think when I looked at the demographics, it's mainly female and it's mainly 40 plus. So my instinct is that it's adoptive mothers or
Yeah.
female adoption professionals, or adoptees, female adult adoptees. Yeah, similar,
Very
baby scoop era, like me. So that's the audience in terms of the podcast. In terms of who I work with, I do webinars with adoption professionals, adoptive parents, and adoptees.
Okay. Very interesting. So tell me about this Thrive framework that you have started putting together.
So it's about distilling everything that I've learned from what I've heard from people across the adoption constellation. So I have interviewed adoptees, clearly, adoptive parents, adoption professionals, adoption therapists, birth mothers, a couple of birth fathers. So I have, and my questions are all about thriving. So what thriving means to you, what helps you thrive, what gets in the way of you thriving, how you overcome those obstacles. And all those learnings I've kind of I've used the word distill a couple of times. Yeah, I've distilled them down. Also from what I've learned from the pre-interview conversations as well, and from doing the webinars and the in-person trainings and panel chairing adoptee panels and different things like that I've done. So yeah, it's a summation of everything that I've learned about. Well, the Thrive stands for T for trauma, H for healing, R for resilience, I for identity, E for vision, and E for empowering others. So that gives
I
you
love that.
a flavor of what it's about.
Yeah, I love that. So, how do you then teach that to others? Are you encouraging, I mean, I'm assuming you're encouraging adoptees to thrive
Yeah.
and
So
learn
yeah,
to live with their story.
yeah. So the webinars, I do webinars for all some groups. Sometimes it's just one of those three groups. Sometimes
Sure.
it's a mixture of those groups. So yeah, the Thrive framework it's about stories, it's about metaphors, it's about shifts in our perspective. So it's creating space for learnings to happen, and usually more about dialogue than monologue. Right? I prefer a
Interesting.
conversation to a monologue. So I'm engaging people with the content rather than just talking at them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then,
When the audience allows and when they're up for it. So
right.
sometimes in an open setting where people haven't met each other before, they're a little bit hesitant and don't really want to engage. So that would, like on an open webinar, if I'm working with a group of adoptive parents for a parent association, they kind of know each other and they're a little bit more forthcoming. If they're adoptive professionals, again, a little bit more forthcoming. Yeah. So yeah, I get my juice out of the conversation. I don't like talking at people. It's not my.
Yeah,
Not my
I always prefer a dialogue. I don't like to just talk to them. Um, so I'm so curious about this. What is the adoption world culture like between, I know you do a lot in the US, you work a lot
Yes,
with
in the UK.
UK.
What the
What is
differences or similarities?
Yeah, what is it like? I know over here in the US we have a lot of like very loud, angry adoptees. Then there's the very pro adoption is wonderful. There's not, and so it's sometimes hard to find that middle ground. I'm just curious if you see a difference between the two or if they're very similar.
I would say they're similar. I think that American people are more forthcoming and a little bit louder in general than British people. We're a little bit more reserved, and I think that shows culturally in the adoption space. This is just my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I think some of the things that make adoption different in the UK to the US are structural and financial things, right? So in the UK, there are virtually zero voluntary placements these days. Right? We don't.
Okay.
My birth mother, placed me for adoption because her boyfriend didn't want to marry her, to put it bluntly, right? Um, so that was a placement, right? There are virtually zero placements in the UK these days.
Interesting.
They are all removals, right? They're removals because of abuse, neglect, drugs, whatever, right? So there are no voluntary, virtually no voluntary placements in the UK. If so, and domestic adoptive parents don't pay to adopt in the
Okay.
UK. The government pays the agencies.
Interesting. So
So
it's not a big
and
money
it's
thing like it is
yes,
here.
so it's not a big money thing. Um, I saw a few years ago a price list for adoptees, right? And it's different prices for different colors and different prices for different ages and different prices for different ethnicities, different prices for different levels of physical ability, and was almost sick, right?
And that's US or UK?
US, yeah,
Yeah.
because that doesn't happen in
I was
the
gonna
UK.
say that sounds like US.
The
Yeah.
government pays the agencies, the parents don't pay. So I think that adds that kind of, so because of the economics and the market of this, I think um, it adds another layer of trickiness for some adoptees, and also it opens up like trafficking and stuff. You wouldn't be able to traffic. Be a lot harder to traffic in the UK
Right.
because of the way that it's set up. And well, why would you traffic? Because parents aren't going to buy black market. There's very few black market babies, right? So, um, yeah. What else is different? Well, there's far more transracial adoption in the US, which often adds a layer of complexity. There's far more international adoption in the US, so that adds another layer of complexity too.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I can keep going, but those are kind of the main
Yeah.
ones.
I would be curious what your perspective is. is it because it's not a full industry that mothers are not voluntarily relinquishing their children in or their babies in the UK, or is it just a cultural thing that they take care of their own?
Um, I would say it's a cultural thing, and I would say that the probably the biggest thing is the healthcare, right?
Mm,
So people get free healthcare in the UK.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of
So
sense.
uh, they, some people have private healthcare too, to top up and means they can jump a queue, right? But so mothers don't have the concern of their child's healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's huge.
that's huge. I think as another cultural thing is that the UK is less religious than the States. And
Okay.
yeah, that leads me to think that abortion rates might be higher in the UK than they are in the US. But
Interesting.
this is my speculation. Sorry,
Yeah.
this is a question. I don't know. I'm just surmising. You're saying
Right, right.
you're saying what's the difference is. I'm saying, well, I think these are the differences, and I think these are the reasons why. But they're only based on my own thought rather than any truth.
Right. Yeah. But that is a
Adoption
very
is
interesting
yeah,
observation.
and adoption rates are lower in the UK. So England, so you've got the UK is England, Northern Ireland,
Hmm.
Wales, Scotland. In England, there were only 2,000 adoptions last year. So that's very
Wow.
small. So the population of England would be approximately 70 million,
Okay.
approximately. Yeah. 2,000 adoptions for 70 million
Yeah, that's
is
a very
low,
small.
right? So there's 350 million Americans. That's about 5 times as many as Brits. But there's more than 10,000 adoptions in the US each year.
Yeah. Yeah. There's yeah, I would think probably even more than 10,000. Um
Sorry, yeah,
if you're
I agree with you. Sorry, I meant to say more than 10. Yeah, than
yeah,
10.
I would think that would be on the low end probably.
Yeah.
It's yeah, there's a lot here. Yeah. This is so fascinating. One final question for you before we wrap up here. In all of your work that you've done, this is kind of changing, pivoting topics here again, but in all of your work that you've done, in all of the adoptive families you've seen, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to adoptive parents that every adoptive parent should know?
Well, can I start with the truth and then go to an advice? Yeah? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this isn't a truth that is my truth. It's not something that I've come up with. It's just something that I've heard from the savviest adoptive parents that I have interviewed. And many of them have said this. So what they've said is raising kids, right? Raising adopted kids isn't about fixing them. It's about growing us.
Mm,
And in particular, our ability to not take our kids' trauma personally.
yeah. Yeah. That is
So
so
that's
important.
that truth. The more it will inform how we think, how we feel, and what we do.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
this is a this is about where you're parenting from,
Yeah.
not what you do. So my advice would be to grow, to do what helps you grow. You listener, right? Not you,
Right. Yeah. No, I'm following you.
not you, Anna, right? You listen, right? Do what helps you grow and become a better person, parent, being
Yeah.
on this planet. Find out what helps you grow and do more of that.
Yeah. I think that is so important to remember because I wasn't going to add anything here, but it just was the thought that came to me while you were talking. I think so often as parents, we sit.
That's okay, Anna.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to get the final word here. Um, I think so often as parents, we think that we have to sacrifice so much for our kids. And we should, right? We should be sacrificial parents, but not at the cost of depleting ourselves to the point that we are no longer good parents. And I think that that is something, like you were saying, we have to do what betters us because when we become better, then we are better parents for our children.
Yeah. We have to have more insights. We have to have deeper insights. What helps us as healing? People say, well, time is the greatest healer. Well, if there's no change, then there's no
Yeah, I
healing,
don't think
right?
that's accurate. Yeah,
So, learning, healing is about learning, and learning is about insights, and learning to become a better person is about having insights. Learning to be a better parent is about having insights. Seeing
absolutely.
seeing where we could do our lives better, where we could do parenting better, um, and finding out what helps us do that. Yeah. So the last 19 years of my life, and probably the rest of my life, has been like spending time listening to podcasts and audiobooks whilst I'm walking the dog, whilst I'm driving, on what it
Yeah,
takes for
absolutely.
me to become better.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your years of wisdom, and it's been so fun to get to chat with you. And I just appreciate you joining me today.